We got trade ideas, free agent possibilities for the Chicago Bulls, and more importantly than any and all of that, I'm going to talk about why the Chicago Bulls are sitting in the best place if they really truly want to change the direction of the roster, but why they're probably not going to. We're going to get to all that and more right after this.
You are now tuned in to Chicago Bulls Central, your number one place for all Chicago Bulls news and content.
What's going on, Bulls fans? Welcome to another episode of Chicago Bulls Central, your number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related. I'm the host there, Haize, but more importantly, you guys can follow the channel at Bulls Central Pod on every social media platform that we happen to be on. With that being said, let's go ahead and get into this content for today, y'all. So we have a trade idea from Bleacher Report. There's been a lot of trade ideas. We're at that place in the offseason where, for the teams that are still playing, of course, we're still getting ready for the NBA Finals. That to finally be decided. The Minnesota Timberwolves play tonight against the Dallas Mavericks. This could be a closeout game if the Mavericks take care of business. But with that said, we sit in this place now where there are going to be a lot of different trade ideas from a lot of different outlets. Between your ESPN, your Bleacher Reports, your Bulls Wire, everything's going to have their own type of different trade ideas and scenario for the Bulls to try to make some sense of this roster. Now, the key thing in all of this is to maintain that it's the front office's, their decision and their evaluation. But, we're going to kind of talk about it and break some of those down to see how they make sense. We're the number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related. So to do that, we're going to talk about any and all possibilities and avenues. And so there's a Nikola Vucevic trade that came out from Bleacher Report. They looked at one trade every team could make. And this one was Nikola Vucevic going to the Golden State Warriors along with Alex Caruso for Andrew Wiggins, the number 52 pick in this upcoming draft, and a 2026 first-round pick that's top 4 protected. And so this is one of those deals to where it's giving the Golden State Warriors a defender and wing player and Alex Caruso that they could desperately need, and Nikola Vucevic, who still is productive and maybe could be even more productive, but, does he really fit the way that the Golden State Warriors try to play? That's a question there. We still don't know what they're going to do with Klay Thompson, things like that. And Andrew Wiggins is a polarizing kind of a player, right, to talk about. And it's because that, if this was a couple of years ago, I think most Bulls fans would have been kind of in line with bringing in Andrew Wiggins to this team. But when you look at it, last season, a very big down season for him, 13 points per game on 45% shooting from the field, 35% shooting overall from three-point range as well, and then 75% from free throw range, which is actually one of his best free throw numbers basically since 2016-17. So take that for what you will. He also chipped in 4.5 rebounds, 1.7 assists, right under a steal, right under a block per game as well over that time period. Now, like I said, if it was a couple of years ago, back in like 2020, 21, I think a lot of Bulls fans would have kind of been more on the side of trading for Andrew Wiggins, but he sits at a player that is 29 years old, right? Is going to turn 30 during the season. And while that's not old in life, I always say that, it is a player that if you're starting to see a decline from a player already heading into that kind of makes it a little bit more concerning, right? And that's where Bulls fans sit right now when it comes to Andrew Wiggins. And so this would be a deal that you're not really getting much salary cap relief either when you look at it. When you look at Nikola Vucevic is a little bit over $20 million. Alex Caruso's a little bit over $9 million. You get to Andrew Wiggins, his contract next season is going to be $26 million. So maybe there's a little bit of savings there. But he has 2 years left on his contract after this season. That's an additional year more than what Nikola Vucevic would have on his contract. And it is a player option in that last year of $30 million. You look at that point, he's going to be going on 32 years old, so he's probably going to pick up that option. So it's adding more long-term money for the Chicago Bulls, adding a 52nd overall pick, which, in this type of draft, like I said, especially with a player like Terrence Shannon Jr. potentially going into the second round, kind of some of the other bigs going, in that second round. You got some, like a Mark Sears, who I mentioned, probably going in the second round as well. You can get some talent in that second round, and then the 2026 first-round pick that's top 4 protected. I like the protection on that pick. I wish it was in 2025 more so, which is the deep draft there, but 2026 is shaping up, at least right now, as far as out as we are, to be a decent draft in that time as well. Not as much as 2025, of course, which that one is top 1 protected to the Golden State Warriors, and then it's going to go to the Portland Trail Blazers. So 2026 pick, so that's a potential there, right? So overall, what the Bulls will be getting in this deal is dumping Nikola Vucevic, and I can only see them doing that if they are picking a center. I feel like they're getting a starting caliber center somewhere in this offseason. You're bringing in Andrew Wiggins, who, if you lose out on DeMar DeRozan, maybe you're pivoting and looking at a Wiggins to come in and do some things for you. But at that point, I'd much rather the Bulls just go younger in that case, right, and give a Julian Phillips, a Patrick Williams, a Dalen Terry kind of some opportunity to sink or swim in that case. And so this is one of those deals where I think it helps the Golden State Warriors with what they need, but it doesn't really help the Chicago Bulls much. It doesn't help them kind of eliminate some salary with Wiggins having a extra year in his deal than what Nikola Vucevic has. You're getting rid of probably one of the players that has the most value out in the trade market in Alex Caruso, and you're getting a 52nd overall pick and a heavily protected pick in 2026, which really isn't that either, right? And so I don't like this deal for the Bulls. I love it for the Golden State Warriors, right? If they're still trying to double down and still be competitive and compete, as you know, Steph Curry is still a very productive player. I like it in that sense, but I don't really like this deal for the Chicago Bulls. And maybe that's me being a little bit of a homer. You guys can let me know what you guys think on it overall. And, you know, the Bulls don't seem like they're trying to go the type of move that this move is. This is one of those kind of rebuilding type moves, and we don't see the Bulls going in a full rebuild, right? And I don't think Bulls fans all typically want a full rebuild. Some do, right? But, you know, this isn't, it doesn't provide very much salary cap relief for the Bulls to be, you know, even use their mid-level exception this year. You're not getting back really solid picks. Like, you know, even if you get that 2026 picks, it's top 4 protected. So unless the Warriors have a completely terrible season, you're probably going to get that pick unless they, you know, they have to win the lottery in case like that. So there's some chances there. But then again, that's kicking it off 2 years down the road. You don't know how the Warriors could pivot. You don't know if Steph's going to stay healthy. We don't know what's going to go happen with Draymond. Could he snap and get himself suspended for another amount of time to where they end up keeping that pick? You know, they're young players that the Golden State Warriors have that really helps stand up for them towards the end of that season. And Pod Zeminski and you know and other players like that. It's like I look at this deal and I say this just does not do a whole hell of a lot for the Chicago Bulls, in my opinion. Not that I'm expecting the Bulls to be able to fleece a team in a Nikola Vucevic trade. I'm not expecting that at all, but at least do something that makes a sense for either direction. This type of deal doesn't make sense in any direction that the Chicago Bulls are really going. Yes, there's 2 firsts technically in this type of deal, but it's a 52nd overall pick in a weaker draft and then a top 4 protected 2026 pick in which from between now and then, you don't know what the hell the Warriors are going to do. So that's just kind of the way that I look at it. You guys can let me know what you guys think on that down below. Maybe I'm tripping. Maybe this is a deal that's better for the Chicago Bulls. And I know there are going to be some Bulls fans that think, hey, we're getting off Nikola Vucevic. That's enough. I don't necessarily think that that's enough, especially when you're taking on another player that, yeah, is younger than Vooch, but has already started showing signs of decline and has an extra year left on their deal. And the last year, that deal is $10 million more than what we'd be paying Nikola Vucevic. So that's just kind of my thought process on it. Trying to be fair and evaluate this and not look at deals that just only benefit the Bulls. But this is one that I don't think it has a whole hell of a lot of upside for the Bulls. But maybe I'm tripping. Like, let's say that the Warriors do have a bad season in 2026 and they fall like at number 10. You're getting a top 10 pick then for trading Vooch and Alex Caruso. And maybe you're looking at that part of it as being something that is worth it, right? So really, please, guys, don't be afraid to sound off down below on this. Even if you think I am tripping, I've been known to trip before. Maybe this is a better deal than I am picturing it being. So let me know what you guys think on that down below. But with that said, a interesting potential free agent target has come available or has been mentioned as somebody that the Bulls could pursue. We've already talked about how, like, Buddy Hield, Caleb Martin, I like those guys for the Chicago Bulls in this offseason. If the Bulls do create enough cap space to go after one of those guys, well, enough space to use their mid-level exception. We're probably not going to create true cap space. But something that was mentioned in an article as far as the Bulls potentially being interested in Tobias Harris. Now, one of the reasons why this was mentioned is that in this article, in another one from Bleacher Report, they don't believe that the Bulls, even if they lose DeMar DeRozan, are going to use that as a reason to kind of bottom out. They're going to try to find a veteran that could step in there, maybe give some of what DeMar gave and be that starting, forward for the Chicago Bulls while still allowing a player like Patrick Williams or Julian Phillips to have some time, to kind of acclimate. Well, more so for Julian Phillips, Dalen Terry. Patrick Williams needs to be ready to go. He's heading into freaking year 4. But with that said, Tobias Harris is an interesting player because he's one that a lot of Bulls fans will look at 31 years old. He'll turn 32 before the start of next season and say that, does he really fit where the Bulls are going, right? Does he fit the play style of the Chicago Bulls? He's always been a productive player, right? And is a player that, has severe limitations, right? But he's always been very productive. He's always been fairly efficient on top of that as well. And he's a player that kind of brings a lot of what we wanted from like a Torrey Craig, but like I said before, kind of he supercharged that. He brings the same type of play, but he's as a player that can start still for you right now and still be productive. It really comes down to the value, right? What would the Bulls be signing him for? And if per this article that they're signing him for the mid-level exception, I'm not necessarily mad at that. You get a veteran piece that can come in, that you still are looking at Julian Phillips, Dalen Terry, them ready to make leaps. And he's a player that, has played primarily at the 4 over the last leg of his career, at being at 6'8", 226 pounds. Yeah, people could still say it's small ball, which I know kind of Bulls fans are over, but he's a player that's thrived in it, right? When you look at it, he's played some of his best basketball being at that 4 position. And it depends then at that point, what are you doing elsewhere on the team? So Tobias Harris is one that initially, in hearing the name, I don't like. And it's not that I love it either. It's just that if the Bulls are going to make a veteran signing for the mid-level exception, and if he's willing to take that mid-level exception to come to this team where he will have a clear role, he will have players in the wing looking to take over the position from him as well, and maybe you sign him for a 2-year, 3-year deal at that mid-level exception type money, and if you can get it as the last year being a team option or something like that, I don't hate it, right? And this also could be something where maybe it's not a 3-year deal. Maybe it's just a 2-year deal at the mid-level exception. And then you're looking at, having this year, and then hopefully at maybe the year afterwards, Julian Phillips or whoever we draft are ready to start. And then you're kind of moving on at that point, and he becomes a depth piece for you. So it is a pick, though, that if the Bulls were going to go Tobias Harris with their mid-level exception, they're still going for it. They are still trying to compete for either playoff spots, play-in spots, whatever that is. And a lot of Bulls fans are going to appreciate that. Well, kind of my mindset and thought process on this offseason for the Bulls is that, if you can keep your 2025 first-round pick that's top 10 protected to the Spurs, I think you need to try to do that. But again, not to say to tank to do that, just to say we want to prioritize our young guys. If they swim and we end up missing out on that pick, it's because our young guys stepped up, and we now know what we have in them. If they do fail, we keep the top 10 pick. We get an opportunity to then take a look at bringing in a guy who can really change the direction of our franchise. So, I know I've said that a lot over this offseason. So that's where it sits. I don't necessarily hate Tobias Harris as a player. I definitely don't love Tobias Harris as a player either. It'll be one of those things that keeps up the status quo of basically what this front office has done here over the last handful of years. And that brings about its own kind of naysayers and people who would either like it or appreciate it or wherever else when it comes down to it. Like Tobias Harris is a nice veteran pickup. That's what it would be. It's a nice veteran pickup. And when you look at it, having like a Kobe White, Ayo Dosunmu, Tobias Harris, at this point, we're probably either DeMar Levine or Stain or something like that. It is something that you look at and say, that could be a team that has some balance and strikes some balance, especially with Tobias Harris' ability to hit a 3-point shot. You can't just leave him open. But then again, he's kind of streaky in that too. So, that's something to look at. Like I said, overall, it's the money that's mentioned in this. The money at it being the mid-level exception, which is $12.9 million. If he's willing to accept that, I don't hate the pickup. I don't hate it. Still have my own questions about it, but I don't necessarily hate that pickup. But you guys can let me know what you guys think on that one down below. Do you think I'm tripping again? Is Tobias Harris maybe a better pickup than what I'm letting on? Again, like I said, if the Bulls are kind of keeping what they're going, like for example, if they lose Torrey Craig, DeMar walks for nothing, and you're filling in Tobias Harris with expecting like a Julian Phillips to kind of pick up a larger role, maybe, right? It's a possibility. But in that sense, you're still looking at Patrick Williams to step up. Maybe you're moving Patrick Williams back to the 3, which is what a lot of Bulls fans want to see is Patrick Williams at the 3, even though I kind of think a 3-4 with Tobias Harris, Patrick Williams raises its own questions. But, Bulls fans, let me know what you guys think on that down. All right, let's move on. Next topic, last topic of the day I want to talk about is that, in talking about this and in looking at what other outlets are talking about with the Chicago Bulls, right? You either get the camp that is clearly in the hey, we think the Bulls are going to go rebuild, even though we don't think that they are. These are moves that make sense for that. Or you get hey, the Bulls aren't going to go rebuild. They've shown this. They're going to try to stay competitive. These are the moves that make sense with that. Overall, right now, the Bulls probably sit in their best place to make a true change in direction for the roster, and they're probably not going to, and they probably shouldn't. I don't know, right? It's such an interesting thing. Of course, with AK talking about change in the season in the press conference, a lot of Bulls fans are focused on that. Hell, I've been focused on that as well, right? When you look at everything going on with the Bulls, DeMar DeRozan is an unrestricted free agent. He can walk away. Yeah, I get it. Bulls fans are going to say, but you can't let him walk away for nothing. I get it. This is where the Bulls sit at. Zach LaVine is clearly on the trade block. You have a player like Alex Caruso, who's a veteran who does have trade value that you could use to attach because of his contract only being a little over $9 million. You could try to get out of Nikola Vucevic's contract with pairing that with it. And so this could be a move in where a lot of other teams around the NBA will truly use to change the direction of the roster. Not necessarily tank, not necessarily go full rebuild, but to clear out a lot of the veterans on this team that are either, if you look at it as not are taking away opportunities from the younger players, or if you're looking at it as are keeping the Bulls from an opportunity at having like a number 1 overall pick or something like that. That's the opportunity that the Bulls sit at. They sit in a unique place. Alex Caruso, an expiring 1-year contract. Yeah, you're probably not going to get as much back because it is expiring unless the team feels like they can immediately sign Alex Caruso to an extension, which they could do. You got Nikola Vucevic, who's clearly on a decline, who's not as bad as what some Bulls fans make him out to be, but you can attach those two. Zach is on the trade market. It seems like the Bulls are at a place where they're willing to move Zach LaVine, even at a loss. We know, Bulls fans, we know everybody doesn't agree with that, and they don't have to move Zach LaVine yet either. They could very well keep Zach LaVine. And then you got DeMar, right? And you also got Torrey Craig for that matter. Torrey Craig, who has a player option who's probably going to opt out on if he's looking for the most money. Now, if he's looking for the situation, the Bulls, of course, still offer him a situation that he's used to with the coach and things like that. But, this is an opportunity where a lot of teams, a lot of front offices will use this to make a larger pivot on their roster. You also have a 11 overall pick in this draft, which is, a weaker draft, but it is still a high pick. You got the Portland Trailblazers pick, which is, lottery protected until 2028. This could be a year where the Bulls could look to make some moves, to be a little bit more active. And that is why when you hear AK say things like change has to come, he understands he has to make some change, because this is the offseason that offers the opportunity to get a lot of that change done theoretically. The bigger question that we always have to ask with the Bulls, though, is will they take advantage of it, and then should they be taking advantage of it, right? DeMar DeRozan is a player that, like I've said before, per his production, he deserves another contract. Doesn't mean that it's going to be here. Zach LaVine is another player that is still young. He's still, you gave him the contract. You have him. You don't have to move him at any point, especially if you feel like you're not getting the value back. And there's also enough hooks in this team to see where AK would want to try to hold on to certain things to keep this version of it together and to keep competing. And that's where the interesting crossroads that this front office is going to find themselves at, is that you have a keen position to really make some serious moves on your roster, really change the direction of your team to get draft assets back for Alex Caruso while also eliminating a not terrible contract, but a declining contract to Nikola Vucevic. You have the opportunity to look at a 34-year-old player in DeMar DeRozan and say, this is the offer that we have for you. If you can't take it, this is kind of the best that we can do. It sucks. We want you here. And then maybe make a move based off that. The bigger question is, how aggressive does AK truly want to make the changes that he mentioned in the season-ending press conference? And that's what's harder to gauge by AK. AK is a GM who really does move by the beat of his own drum. And so, that could be good at times. I think it's been more kind of a headache for Bulls fans lately, just with the state of the team and where we are and things like that. So that definitely plays a part into it all as well. And so it's going to be interesting to see. It's going to be really interesting to see, because this could be the perfect season for the Bulls to make some serious breakups on this roster and still get assets back for them is the key thing, right? You can move anything at any point in time, but if you don't strike at the right time, then you're looking at the return on the investment getting declining each year that goes by. And that's what this front office has done every single year, is that they kind of hold on to pieces too long to where it then becomes, the possible return on that investment gets less and you end up losing, right? So this is an opportunity, especially somebody who you guys may have known. Like, I've been in finance most of my life, where risk reward, played the stock market. So, it's the risk reward right now for the Bulls potentially to make a big change. The reward level is very high for it, and the risk can go on, especially with Alex Caruso expiring at the end of the season. If you do lock in DeMar DeRozan to a $40 million contract, theoretically, then that value of potentially him going and even getting, because now you can get something back in a sign and trade, maybe, right? Whereas you're stuck to another bad contract. And then the Vooch aspect of it, it's going to be hard to move Vooch if you're not attaching him to a player like Alex Caruso or a first-round pick. And at this point, do the Bulls really want to give up more first-round picks than what they gave up to build this team that didn't work? And then the Lonzo Ball aspect of all of this plays a part into it as well. Like, an expiring contract in Lonzo, or a wave and stretch opportunity there as well. Like, there's a lot of different scenarios for the Bulls to really look at. And I, for one, as somebody who kind of likes watching and monitoring things, is going to be fun to see exactly what they do with some of these assets, I guess is a better way to say it. And I guess we'll be seeing it and covering it right here at Chicago Bulls Central. But make sure you guys are following the show at Bulls Central Pod. You can send us any feedback, questions, comments, concerns, bullcentralpod@gmail.com. Lastly, if you want to leave a text message and our voicemail for the mailbag, the number to do so, 773-270-2799. We are the number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related, thanks to you guys. And like I like to end every episode on, go Bulls. Love you guys. See red if you can, y'all. Peace.
This has been a presentation of the Break Media.